Howdy fellas. Welcome back to another review where I share my opinions and act as though they are factual, even though thoughts on the ride will actually differ greatly depending on who you ask. Today's subject is Maverick! This is an Intamin Blitz located right along Lake Erie at Thuzy Central Park, and straight up, it's an incredible ride. Let's dig a bit deeper though, because just describing the whole thing in one word is not exactly a review. I'm gonna start this out with some history, because A, Maverick wouldn't exist if it was never made, and B, there's actually a pretty interesting piece of history that everyone already knows about, but I'm going to give my 2 cents on it anyway. Whitewater Landing was an old log flume that used to be in Frontier Town, but then it closed on October 31st of 2005. The ride was disassembled, but the station was left intact and is now used as Maverick's photo booth and part of the queue. Cedar Point gave Maverick the codename Project 2007 before its announcement, and as 2006 went by, more and more of the ride could be seen being constructed.
Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros. It's Drew here, and we're back finally
Cedar Point, Frontier Town,
to check out the construction on
Project 2007.
Project 2007 continued construction all through 2006 until it was finished on October 28, 2006. This left a completed Maverick just chilling there to gain a ton of hype for guests at Cedar Point. One of the main elements that looked really good was the drop. At 95 degrees steep, it was definitely a superimposing element. There was also the Stangle dives. Even without ever seeing a train go through these elements, there's no way you can look at them and tell me they aren't whippy as heck. Finally, there was the Twisted Horseshoe Roll. This was a brand new, one-of-a-kind inversion that should definitely have drawn some attention. When Maverick was designed, there was one major oversight. The launches were super unreliable. Okay, obviously I'm talking about the quote-unquote Heartline roll. Stangle has made some amazing layouts, but I really just don't know how he let this get by. For some reason, he thought it would be a good idea to include a barely heartlined roll after the second launch.
For those of you who are unfamiliar
with heartlining, it's a method of track rotation developed by Stangle that works by having the banking twist with the rider's heart instead of their head. This makes the ride much more comfortable and less headache-inducing for passengers. However, a lack of heartlining was only one of this roll's issues. It also rolled way too fast for the space it took up. A lot of people have been comparing the roll at the end of Velocicoaster to Maverick's roll recently, but if you actually compare the two, they're very different. A lot of enthusiasts have said that they would have loved to experience Maverick in its original state, but I think I'll have to pass on a migraine. Once Maverick began testing and the park figured out how bad the roll really was, it was removed and replaced with a snappy S-bend. Despite not breaking a single record, Maverick still opened on May 26, 2007 to rave reviews. When it opened, it was using Intamin's hard over-the-shoulder restraints that can still be found on King Dakar and some other Intamins, and that was really the only major and consistent complaint. With how aggressive the ride was, there were some reports of neck banging on the restraints, but aside from that issue, the ride was very well loved. 9 years later, the park made the switch to the soft, more flexible over-the-shoulder restraints that Maverick still features to this day. Maverick is themed to the Wild Wild West. Yeehaw! In fact, the ride's tagline is, "The Old West was never this wild." The queue features a little bit of vague theming and the buildings are made to look somewhat Wild Westy, but it's nothing incredible by any means. Most of it is just switchbacks and it does the job, but it's far from my favorite line to wait in at Cedar Point. Once you get up to the station, the theming doesn't really get any better. It's not too special at all, just some more wood building look and stuff. But now is where we get into the real theming with all the yeehaws and cowboy hats and cacti and tumbleweeds that you could ever ask for. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, but mostly gentlemen judging by my statistics, which speaking of also show that a lot of you guys aren't subscribed, and so if you feel like doing that, go for it. Maverick features the immaculate theming work of rocks and water. Rocks. Okay, yeah, it doesn't sound like much, but it does actually add to the ride. The way they're placed around the whippy transitions make them seem like you might hit them. They also just generally give the ride a bit of a better appearance in its otherwise bland plot of land. Well, except for the lake behind it, of course. There's also the water effects. When Maverick comes zooming out of the second launch, it barrels down a turn and over a little pond. The pond is supposed to have water jets that shoot out as the train rockets by, but unfortunately there was nothing of the sort when I was there. Even so, water. Alright, enough rambling about aspects of the ride that most people forget about. Let's get into the fun stuff. Literally, because, like, Maverick is fun. After waiting in some gruesome switchbacks that play the same fun TV rotation 4 times, you'll walk up some stairs and into the station. This station loads 2 trains at once because that's just how it goes when you're this wild. You'll be directed to a row, but if you ask nicely instead of being annoying about it, they should give you the row you want. Once you board the train, you'll notice a certain little piece that sticks up, and if you're a guy, you may just get a little concerned. Rest assured though, you should be fine. Next, you'll pull down your over-the-shoulder restraint that never actually feels like an over-the-shoulder restraint and grab the handles, noting how radical you look when you do so. The train will then pull out of the station and very quickly speed up to ascend the 105-foot tall lift hill? Launch? I'm not sure what to call this, go debate about it or something in the comments. Regardless of whatever the heck you want to call it, you blast up it like a tumbleweed rolling down Main Street, in the Wild West of course. Once the train reaches the top, you slow down quite a bit before plunging down into a 95-degree drop that's only 100 feet tall. Yes, that makes it very steep. This is a very crazy drop in the back row. It absolutely launches you out of your seat like you're a cowboy whose horse is very mad at you. I promise, that's the last cowboy reference for at least the next 15 seconds. Put your revolvers away, guys. After the drop, you enter a right-hand turn with some pretty solid positives before getting absolutely whipped to the left with a super snappy transition. This transition not only has great whip and lats, but it also has a tiny pop of floater that makes it just that little bit more wild. Don't get too used to turning left though, because very close up ahead is another whippy transition that turns you back to the right. This transition feels exactly the same as the last one, and it's just as amazing. Once this right-hand turn reaches an end, the track straightens out and pulls up into a super sharp moment of strong ejector airtime. Yes, I said super right. This hill caught me off guard in all 3 of my rides, regardless of what seat I was in. For reference, I got 2 rides in the back and 1 in the front. Following this hill, there's this really tiny straight section that actually adds to the ride. It seems like it may offer a second to breathe, but as soon as you level out, you're whipped right back to the right. Next up is a one-of-a-kind inversion, but it's actually just 2-0G roll.
That's the twisted horseshoe roll. It's a one-of-a-kind inversion only featured on Maverick, and even that element doesn't come close to anything on the Void.
I like these inversions, and they are pretty non-stop like the rest of the ride, but don't expect them to be the best part. Moving on from that, the train hits a little pop up into the second launch that gives a surprising moment of airtime. You slow down for just a few seconds before hitting the amazing second launch. It's no dragster, but dang, this is a really forceful launch for just being LSMs. The best part about the launch isn't even the launch itself though, it's the whip right after it. You're rocketing out of a tunnel at 70 miles per hour, and Intamin really had the nerve to put an insanely whippy transition directly after this. There is no way to brace for it, and it is absolutely wild, like the Wild West. Following this transition and turn is, sadly, trims. In the back, I barely even noticed the trim's existence, but in the front, it definitely felt like the train was slowing down. After this, you'll quickly rip to the right and dive into a sweeping turn over the water. Now we see the former site of the lack of Heartline roll. May it rest in wherever the heck it got put after they realized it was terrible. In its place is an S-bend, and while a lot of people have called this element one of the dead moments on the ride, I really disagree. The transition on it has a pop of airtime along with being fairly whippy, and during the straighter section of it, I couldn't help but look up at the rapidly approaching Stangle Dive and think, oh crap, because that's the furthest you get before the whippiest element yet comes. It slams you to the right, reminiscent of a drunk cowboy stumbling out of the town saloon. As soon as it reaches the highest moment of banking, it whips right back into another Stangle Dive in the other direction. This one is even crazier though, because it's more of a transition into it, and it banks further. My only thought riding through the second Stangle Dive was just, how are we gonna make it level again? We're pretty close to the ground and still banked like 120 degrees. And then it just kinda yanks the train back to a straight position. It really doesn't feel like it should happen, it's just like a bonk, whoa, zoom, bonk, you know? There isn't much layout left now, but even here it still hauls through one last ejector hill and turn before whipping into the brake run. These last few moments serve to cap off a masterpiece of a layout with flawless pacing and element choice. Not a single moment on Maverick feels out of place, it's just straight aggressiveness from start to finish. Every element has some kind of force to it, and I absolutely love it. Not many rides bring tears to my eyes from their speed, with the only ones that have done it being Top Thrill Dragster and Millennium Force. Those coasters both reach super high speeds, so it makes sense. But Maverick only has a max speed of 70 miles per hour that it holds for less than 5 seconds. So how in the world did this coaster make me cry? I think it's just how non-stop Maverick is, because I just can't emphasize enough that there are no brakes on this ride. If it wasn't obvious enough yet, I love Maverick. It is one of my favorite coasters as of late 2021, and something that I think everyone should get to experience at some point or another. It makes me super excited to hopefully be able to ride more Intamin Blitzes in the future. If I have to give it a score out of 10, it's going to be a 10. That doesn't mean it's perfect, as I don't think any coaster will ever be perfect, but it's one of 3 coasters that I've ridden that gets really dang close to it. As far as what you guys think, I recently posted a poll on my story asking you to rate Maverick anywhere from 1 to 10. The results of this came out to about a 9 out of 10, so it seems like I'm not alone in loving Maverick.
Howdy partners, this is the end of the video. If you enjoyed my terrible humor, please do drop a like to help me grow a little more, and also subscribe to make a meaningless number increase along with my self-esteem. Thank y'all very much for watching, I greatly appreciate your support. Goodbye gamers, go ride Mavericks so you can feel like I did back on my first day of cowboying. What a great day that was, getting shots fired at me left and right.